Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. I've had you guys ask me for quite some time, actually for over a year, in fact, that you wanted me to do a review on the POF Revolution. I've had a hard time getting a hold of one up until now. Fortunately, at SHOT Show, I met up with Tony Tarantino at POF and talked to him, and he said, "Well, I can get you a rifle," and he got me a rifle. So here we are. The POF Revolution is like many things that have come out of POF. POF has always been an incredibly, I would say, innovative company. POF has their own take on things. Frank DeSama has definitely come up with a lot of very unique and very innovative accessories for as far as new components, improving on components to make his rifle that much better than the competition. You see me do reviews on his POF Puritan, which is probably one of my favorite ones that he has. It's an external piston gun, but it's not your typical external piston gun. He's got several enhancements over there over the basic ones. You also see one I did on the Renegade Plus, which were direct gas. Now, POF is known for external piston. That is what they are known for. Their flagship models, the original 308s and the 5.56s were all external piston. Frank had described to me in the past that when he got into this market, he wanted to do something different. There were tons of people who were making regular AR-15s, and he wanted something that was going to distinguish himself, which he definitely did with piston markets. Now, he's been in this piston market probably... Well, right from the beginning, if you look at the time frame around the time the HKM4 was introduced, which was probably maybe the 2002 era, in that area in there someplace, right at that same time is when you saw this one come out and LWRCI came out. So those were your, if you want to call them your pioneers of external piston, I would say that would be correct. And as I stated, he was external piston. He did, however, as time went on, I think just out of customer demand, he did make a few direct impingement guns. He had the Renegade Plus, which were 5.56, and he had the old school 308, all which I've tested in the past. Excellent rifles, reliable, accurate as hell. But now we get today with the 308. Now, anybody who's wanted a 308, 308s are often, obviously they're larger than the 5.56 rifles, a little heavier, more recoil. And many people have tried to make them lighter, still using the standard Armorlight or DPMS pattern receivers, which are standard AR-10. They're built for heavy use on a 308. And probably around 2014, in that time period, one of the first real changes in the concept for the 308 rifle was done by DPMS. The DPMS was called the Gen 2. Now, the Gen 2 had some very, very important changes to it. First off, it shortened up the receivers. It shortened up the upper and it shortened up the lower, which in turn shortened the bolt carrier group as well. Now, none of those parts on that rifle are what you would call compatible with any other system in the industry, other than the trigger and so forth. But the bolt carrier, and the lower receiver were all proprietary to that rifle. It did decrease the weight, absolutely. And I can recall from doing a review on it, it was just a little on the heavy recoil. But you definitely could feel the lighter rifle with that heavy caliber. Now, the DPMS Gen 2 also had some innovations on the bolt carrier group as well. But they also took the AR-15 type bolt and scaled it up to fire 308, which one of the concerns with that was the thin wall around the rim. The concern was that breaking. The Gen 2 rifle also in that bolt utilized 2 ejectors. Now, one of the things that you do notice with these rifles is you have a higher opening bolt velocity, and what that causes is a higher rate of fire. The higher rate of fire, what that causes is more speed in the way the bolt carrier group is going back and forth. And what happens is when that's too fast, you often have failures to eject because the cartridge case just doesn't have enough time to get out of the ejection port. So the way that they corrected that was they utilized 2 ejectors. Now, 2 ejectors have been used on many 308s. LMT does it, HK does it. There's a couple other manufacturers that are doing it now as well. Most of those guys who are military-grade companies like LMT, they're utilizing short barrels in 308, and that is very necessary in a short barrel for reliability. But several of these other commercial companies you're seeing doing it as well. On comes POF at the 2016 SHOT Show showing prototypes of the POF Revolution. Now, what Frank wanted to do was he wanted to take the AR-15 and turn it into a 308 rather than scale the gun up to fire 308. So, in essence, he wanted an AR-15 that fired 7.62 NATO, which is pretty much exactly what he did. The amount of similar components is really interesting. You're using a standard 5.56 bolt carrier group in this thing. What we're going to do is we're going to go through this. We're going to go through some comparisons so you can see what exactly was done in the receivers to show that this truly is an AR-15 that fires 7.62. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about magazines. As you can see up here, we have various magazines. Anytime I get a rifle, what I do is I have a series of different manufacturers' magazines I want to test for magazine compatibility. So this is my normal SKU right here of the different magazines that I will fire in a 308. So all of these magazines were fired in this rifle to determine compatibility. And of all these, there was only two magazines I had that did not like it. Was the IWI 7.62 and the D&H Tactical. Now, we have Knights Armament, Advanced Storage Components, Knights Armament, C Products Defense, ASC, Lancer, Hex Mag, Magpul 20-round magazine, Magpul 25-round magazine. Now, all these magazines work beautifully in it. Now, these two magazines are excellent magazines. I've actually never had any problems with them, but there are some interesting aspects of this rifle that make it a little bit more finicky on magazines. This is utilizing a 5.56 barrel extension. Now, if you look at the size of a 5.56 barrel extension compared to a 7.62, there's a lot of difference in there. So you also have a lot more room in there for a magazine to allow a round to feed in there. So you're requiring a much tighter feed pattern so it goes directly into that magazine. And I'm expecting that's why I had the feeding problems with these two magazines. Even though both of them are anti-tilt followers, they did not get them right in line with that chamber the way that this rifle needed to be aligned. Now, speaking with Frank Asama, he had said that he recommends using the PMags for 100% reliability. And I have to agree that the PMags were 100% reliable. But then again, all of these magazines from here over were 100% reliable. I'm thinking if you have a lot of different magazines and you buy one of these, you just want to run the magazines through them and see which ones work and which ones don't, and keep those magazines aside for for the rifle. But that's why I wanted to show you the magazines. Was I do run quite a few different magazines through every single rifle I get. It doesn't matter what it is. I have a good selection of magazines across the industry. We're going to go over the rifle as is. I'm going to show you all the components on it and what everything is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through some comparisons. We're going to show you bolt carrier groups and receivers compared to the AR-15 and then the AR-10, and then you'll be able to see exactly what was done on the Revolution. But starting from the rear, we have a Mission First Tactical stock. These are excellent stocks. This is a good one, but I've had several of these that this stock is extremely tight. This is the only reason why I didn't like them was because I had many that were really, really tight on the receiver extension. Now, judging from the way this one works, Mission First Tactical may have fixed that, so we don't have to, yank the thing out. We have a Mission First Tactical pistol grip. Now, the lower receiver on here is what's referred to as the Gen 4 POF receiver. Now, what POF Gen 4 means, there were several modifications that were made to it. First, you have a flared magazine well. You have an ambidextrous safety magazine or bolt release on the right side. If you look over the side, we have an ambidextrous magazine release, your bolt catch, as well as your selector. But what you also have right here is if you push upward, this holds the bolt open. You also have a nice swell here for you to be able to place your finger so it's outside of the trigger. Now, one thing I want to notice about the bolt release. This bolt is a bolt release. It is not a bolt catch. So on the right side you can release, but if you want to lock the bolt open, you either have to use the bottom or you have to use the bolt catch at the side. Also notice the Tomahawk charging handle. This is an excellent design for as far as being able to get your hands on either side. It's very popular. In fact, I have one of those on my POF Puritan. I went and I got that separate to replace it on it. You will notice we have the KNS anti-walk system on here. The reason that is the trigger mechanism that's in here is POF, which is a drop-in system. It's not held in the way the standard trigger is. So when that's dropped into place, they're 4.5 pound, this is 4.5 pounds. Trigger is dropped in, the pins go through and they're locked in place, which is why you see that. You do see we have an oversized trigger guard for use with gloved hands. So it's definitely a fully ambidextrous rifle. The handguard is typical what you would find with all the weapons in the POF's arsenal. They're attached from the top with set screws, and then on the sides here as well. It does sit up higher. Your optics will sit up higher than any other system in the industry. That's probably one of the negatives of the POF guns is you do have this extra, nearly ½ inch on on the top of the upper receiver. What we have here is the 14.5-inch M-Lock MRRR handguard system, which is also designed and manufactured by POF. The barrel is a 16.5-inch match barrel. It's nitride coated 1 and 10-inch twist. It also has a three-port muzzle brake, and you can also see the gas system in here. Now, one of the neatest things about the way he does his barrel nuts, this barrel nuts goes from here to here, which works as a heat sink. So what that does is it takes the heat out of the chamber to help keep the rifle cooler, the barrel cooler, and the chamber cooler, and it increases your threshold for as far as cook-off is concerned. Now, the barrels, as we said, are nitride coated. There's no chrome plating in here. And these barrels have been known to be very, very accurate. Every POF rifle I've ever shot, the accuracy has been always sub-MOA. They have always been excellent quality. The bolt carrier, again, external piston. So we have one-piece carrier group, which is it's a high phosphate nickel coated. We have a chrome bolt in here. And we're going to be seeing that stuff a lot closer, because what we're going to do is we're going to go through and take a look at the parts to show you the difference in the size between the AR-15, the Revolution, and as well as the AR-10 to see what exactly Frank did. First, we're going to look at the bolt carriers themselves. First one here we're going to see is a standard 5.56 mil spec. Center, POF Revolution, and on the end, you'll see the 308 AR-10. Now, you can see that the 5.56 AR-15 and the POF 308, this is the exact same bolt carrier for as far as being AR-15. This is not a special bolt carrier. This is a standard 5.56 bolt carrier of POF's external piston. And you can see you are well over, well, about an inch and a half, if not more. You can see how much shorter it is than the AR-10. So, first part of keeping it smaller, you're using the exact same bolt carrier. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the bolt heads themselves. Now, I'll say when I first saw this rifle, that was the first real piece of concern that I had. If you take a look right here, you'll notice how the thickness around here on the 7.62 by 51 bolt carrier group. Now, if you take a look at the AR-15 and 5.56, you'll see how much material is around in here. Now we take this, open it up to this, and you see how thin these sidewalls are on here. That deeply concerned me for as far as reliability, and I will tell you why. If you go back into the 90s when Colt manufactured their 7.62 by 39 Colt Sporters, they experienced multiple failures of either bolts, lugs 1 and 7, with them breaking because of the fact that they went from this down to a more thin, such as this. It eventually led to Colt discontinuing the 7.62 by 39 for two reasons. One was the bolts breaking, and two was the failure with a lot of the magazines that were out there. Now, the DPMS did something very similar for as far as the way they scaled this. I've not heard of any issues. I also have never ever fired a lot of rounds through them. But when you go from this to this in size, then you go from this to decrease all the surface area around the cartridge case. It was just very disturbing. I have to say that I fired almost 500 rounds out of this rifle myself. Not too much, but I fired 500 rounds, no problems whatsoever. And I did some research on this rifle as well, just to see what was going on with people who were using it. And I've seen some guys who've had over 1,000 rounds in the bolts holding together. So that's all good science. Perhaps maybe Frank found something on here that Colt missed, or somebody else missed, to make that bolt more reliable, being as thin as it is. You have the much smaller locking lugs, because you also use the 5.56 millimeter barrel extension versus the 7.62 barrel extension, which means you have a lot less locking surface on your locking lugs, as you can see here as well. So you're really decreasing all the material all the way around the locking lugs, as well as the locking lugs inside the barrel extension. So I'd love to see one of these rifles after maybe 10,000 rounds to see how it holds up. Maybe it will. I just don't have any experience with that. Okay, over here on the left, we have the standard 5.56 millimeter. In the middle, we have the POF, and on the end, we have a 308. You can see basically what the POF did was they cut material out from here to here. In fact, if you look, you can see the location of the rear takedown pin, and you can see how much closer it is on the POF, because that's the material that was removed. So they took the magazine well, moved everything back, and now you have less material here. Where here you can see the shear material from here to here, or how much larger it is. So he optimized by removing the material here and having the trigger head to move everything back, and there you have it. So by moving all this to the rear, he was able to give you a much more compact receiver. Now the receiver extensions are all standard AR-15. This is a standard 3 steel weight buffer, carbine buffer. But you definitely, when you set these one on top of each other, you can see how much material has literally been removed. Then you go further on top of here, you can see how similar that they are. So in essence, I do believe what you have here is an AR-15 that fires 7.62. Next we'll take a look at the upper receivers. So what you'll see here is a standard AR-15 upper receiver, the full length AR-10, and now we see the POF Revolution. Well, if you look at this, and then you look at this, you will see their lengths are identical. Obviously everything's been made wider to accommodate the 7.62 NATO, but you will see that everything has been cut right down. We're going to take a little look at the piston system itself right now. As you can see, there's no return spring. Now up front you have the gas valve, where you have a standard and a suppressed setting. So we can see here the operating system itself. You have the actual operating rod. The operating rod is extremely thin on this. It's very, very lightweight. You have the gas block. You also have a piston here as well. This is a weight. So that's a spacer. And as you can see by the small holes here, all the different gas settings you have. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 gas settings on here. You can see by the different sizes in the ports. Each one will let in less gas for use. For instance, this largest port you'd see here, that would be for a very bad condition where the gun was extremely dirty and needed to open the gas up. And this one will probably be your normal setting right here. And then these would be for using high power ammunition or suppressed, and that one could be suppressed as well. I do believe you also have a complete shutoff, so you can do it like as a manual bolt action as well. Now, looking at the bolt carrier itself here, first off, you can see to compensate for the fire control group being moved back, you have to use a longer firing pin. We also have the roller cam, which POF has put out for quite some time. This is something that's been, actually this was designed probably in the late 50s or early 60s. There were some AR-10s that I had seen at Reed Knight's Museum that had something similar to this. A little bit different, but it still was a roller size like this. I think this is an excellent enhancement for any rifle. These round edges, they save a lot of the inside of the receiver from a lot of damage, a lot of friction. In fact, I put these on all my 308s. Now we can take a look at the bolt. As you can see, this is an AR-15 bolt with an oversized extractor for 308. You can see how it was scaled up to the fired 308. But this would be the same bolt carrier, to my knowledge, that you would have in one of their 5.56 rifles. Now for a 308, this sucker weighs a light 7.3 pounds. You know, your average AR will weigh around 7 pounds. And one of the neat pictures that I had seen, unfortunately Frank wasn't able to find it, probably around SHOT Show last year, he sent me a photograph of 2 scales. One scale had an HK-MP5, one had an SBR version of the Revolution in 308. And the SBR in 308 actually weighed less than the MP5. So that gives you the degree of lightweight that we're talking here. Another enhancement that was on this rifle was referred to as the E-squared, which to me, I think is one of the best reliability enhancements for any kind of a military rifle. What E-square means is on the inside of the chamber, right where the neck of the cartridge case is, there's 4 slits. What those 4 slits do, they work like fluting. So when the rifle fires, the back pressure comes back, the gas comes back through those holes, and it pushes on the cartridge case. So when the cartridge case goes to extract, not only do you have the extractor pushing, in fact, the extractor is doing probably a quarter of the work. Most of the extraction is being done by the E-squared. That hot gas is pushing on the shoulder of the cartridge case and pushing it out of the chamber. Frank has put that on all of his guns, their 5.56 308s, and it has it on this one as well. When you take a look at the cartridge cases, you'll be able to see that you have 4 flute marks around the neck. And that shows you about the E-square's enhancements. Now, the overall length is about 34 inches with this collapsed. Now, of course, they have SBR versions to make this thing even shorter. Now, of course, MSRP, $2,449. Now, you do not expect anything inexpensive to come out of POF. All their guns are expensive. There's no way around that. But for what you're seeing here, I think it's definitely a reasonable price for what you get here. You know, for as far as versatility, you have the lightweight, you have the ability to fire 308. You have the ability also, at some point, I would imagine, to be able to change out calibers in this as well. The 6.5 Creedmoor or what else you would want that would be based on the 308 platform. The optic, as you see, I chose on here was the Trichicon VCOG. This has really become one of my favorite optics for as far as using for military style rifles at those ranges. Aluminum outer receiver. You have a 1.5 to 9 power. You do have a illuminated reticle in there as well, if you so choose. Goes around the 1913 rail. This has, again, become one of my most favorite optics. Just crystal clear. It works excellent for any range. By putting it on a 1.5 power, it can be used for close quarter battle. Then we have to go out further and further and further out to 6 power. It does take a battery as well, AA. This rifle did not come with any backup sights, so you would definitely want to get some backup sights for it. And I'm a big fan of the Magpul M-Bus Pro or the ARMS 40Ls. As we spoke before, you do have M-LOK, so you can attach points on here, but you also have 1913 rail on the top and on the bottom. Top for putting your iron sight, and bottom for putting a bipod on them, if you so choose. You do have a longer 1913 rail on top. However, since this is all a sleeve, you're not going to have any issues with having it on the rail itself because it's all one piece. You can definitely see where material's been removed, so you can make the gun lighter. I'm sure if he even wanted to, he could probably make it even lighter by taking away more material. But I think this thing is about as light as it needs to be. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this to the range and we're going to see how it shoots. The rifle shot very well. I think my lowest group was 0.895 inches, and my highest was 1.4 inches. The ammunition used was Black Hills 175 grain OTM. I also had some IWI Razor 7.62. My best groups were all obtained with the Black Hills. This is a very unique rifle. I definitely have to give Frank kudos for coming up with something completely out of the box. Nobody has done anything like this. you'd seen such as what DPMS did, where that was a scaling, down. It was taking some weight off it and taking some length off it. But it was not the same for as far as going with the same receivers as the 5.56 version. So we do definitely have the smallest 7.62 rifle probably in the world right here for as far as a size. It's accurate, it's reliable. Even with a 16-inch barrel, I'm still getting pretty much sub-MOA. In fact, in the POF information, it tells you, it says, they guarantee 1 inch to with proper ammunition and proper person shooting it. Now, I'm by no means a sniper, but I definitely would say that it is sub MOA. I did get 2 groups that were sub MOA, 3 that were not, 2 that were. If you have any questions on this rifle, please leave me a comment and I'll try and get back to you. If you enjoyed this, please click like, please subscribe, and even better, share. Thank you.